Hi, welcome to KXAN Plus. You're watching Kristen's Classroom, and this is an episode where we sit down with our meteorologist, Kristen Currie, and learn some fun science snippets or tips or things that we didn't remember when we were back in school learning about science. And this topic is pretty fun. It's about thunderstorms. We've been seeing them here in Central Texas all week, and we're going to debunk some stuff, right?
Absolutely. I think there's a lot of many misconceptions, I would say, about thunderstorms, lightning, tornadoes. And so we're going to start kind of a little mini series within Kristen's Classroom today, talking about the truths and tales of thunderstorms. Next week, we'll do truths and tales of tornadoes. And then I think I'm going to do one on flash flooding too, just because this, like you said, we see it all the time here in Central Texas, severe weather, but we really want to dive into not only what that weather is, but also how do we stay safe from said weather.
Yeah, and knowing what is true and what is not true is going to help us stay safe. So let's dive into that first truth or tale.
Yeah.
What do you have for us?
Yeah. So talking Kristen's Classroom, thunderstorms, truth or tales, just a couple little background points, if you will, about thunderstorms, because if you've been here for any stretch of time here in Central Texas, you know we get a lot of thunderstorm activity. 16 million thunderstorms per year on average worldwide. Now, a lot of that is right over the equator where we see daily thunderstorms. But here in the U.S., we average 100,000 thunderstorms per year. The most deadly, looking just at the numbers, the most deadly part of a thunderstorm, the flash flooding that it can produce, the most destructive would be tornadoes. I think, looking specifically at Central Texas, you could add that the most costly part of our thunderstorms, hail. We have seen some really rotten luck with thunderstorms bringing really big hail to Central Texas over the years. So that's kind of a background. Is obviously thunderstorms happen all the time. They can happen at any point of the year, but we tend to see the frequency of those thunderstorms increase this time of year. So first one, truths and tales of thunderstorms. If someone is struck by lightning, you can't touch them or you'll be electrocuted. What do you think?
I've heard that before.
You have heard that before, right?
I believed it when I was younger, but eventually I stopped believing that.
For sure. So this is a tale. The human body does not store electricity. So if you are with someone who gets struck by lightning, you want to first make sure you call 911 immediately. And then if you are able to, you want to make sure you administer first aid. So this is a big one because this could be the situation of life or death for someone who does get struck by lightning. I believe earlier, maybe last week, that Chief Meteorologist Hank Bannon in Esme, you went into lightning facts and safety and all that. So you can find that episode on KXAN Plus as well. But just kind of looping back in, lightning is a big hazard, right? We see thousands and thousands of lightning events every year across the nation, not even just Texas, but we need to make sure that we know that if someone we are with is struck by lightning, they're not going to hold on to it. And those seconds really matter when it comes to someone being struck.
It would come in and out of their body immediately?
Yeah, I think it's more so, yeah, they get zapped and then, it disseminates. And I will say the only thing you have to realize as someone who is a bystander is whether or not there's water around. Again, water's not going to store electricity. The human body's not going to store electricity, but water can be a good conductor. So if that person is maybe laying in water, you want to make sure you are not in that same puddle or standing on that same wet spot there. But if it comes to the human body, if they get struck, and a lot of what we see as far as lightning strikes go is unfortunately, and I think this was just covered in Nick Bannon's talk of people trying to seek refuge under a tree. Lightning hits the top of the tree, goes down the trunk. If you're standing on a roof,
splits the tree
or closest to the tree, you could get struck. So it's going to be immediate. It's going to be fast. That electricity is going to go away, and you want to administer CPR first aid immediately. So that is your tale number one. Number two, if outside during a storm, crouching will help. What do you think?
Crouching?
Crouching, like squatting down.
I would say no.
This is true, a tale. And maybe it's just where I grew up, but this was something I was taught when I was in school of if you're outside and you're stuck outside and there's a thunderstorm.
Crouch?
You want to crouch down and put your hands out onto the side, just like this, and spread your fingers. That way, if you are struck by lightning, it goes in and goes to the ground. This is not true. I don't know how I came up with that.
Yeah.
You can't just crouch down, because we talk a lot about how lightning is attracted to height. It's not attracted to what something is made out of. Lightning is attracted to height. And so if you were the tallest thing outside, there is a much higher likelihood that you were going to get struck. So I think this idea came from, I'll just make sure I'm not the tallest thing outside. I'll crouch down. But really, when it comes to lightning coming down from a thunderstorm, coming down from a cumulonimbus cloud, that 2 to 3 feet difference is not going to make a difference.
And if you're out in the open, like in a field, I think
Nope.
you would be the first thing that the lightning strikes.
And they say, there is no place outside that is safe. If you are caught in a thunderstorm outside, the safest thing to do is keep walking until you find it
Go
inside.
Yeah.
Yeah, there is no safe place. Not hiding under a tree, not hiding really under anything especially tall. You need to make sure you find yourself a sturdy building. I tell the kids in the classroom, 4 walls and a roof. That it is the only place to be when there is a thunderstorm outside. So
and
crouching down.
It's not even safe to be in a building. That's what Nick was telling me.
Yeah, there are the exceptions, and that I would think would be the real unlucky person if you are inside getting struck by lightning. Sometimes in the older homes, there's some cracks, where the wall meets the window that the electricity can come through. A lot of it is and I think maybe I didn't include this in this slide, but I'm sure y'all covered it. Showering during a storm. If your home has plumbing and those pipes are exposed on the outside, like if they come back out of the ground or garage or whatnot, and electricity hits that from lightning, hits that plumbing outside, metal is a good conductor. Wow. So metal can transfer that electricity inside. Metal and water, good conductor. So if you were standing in the shower underneath that water, underneath the water that's coming out of the metal pipe, you can get struck by lightning, struck by electricity and electrocuted. So
Kristen, I am never showering in a storm. You just scared me.
It's one of those things, and that's why I'm kind of talking about, because I think we know these things, but we don't know why. We don't know why we're told, to not stand under a tree or to not, shower in a storm. And that's literally the reason, is because sometimes if those pipes are exposed outside and they get struck by lightning, anything inside that's surrounding that could potentially get, carry that electricity and electrocute something. Same thing with, which is a little bit more realistic and something we see a lot here, is power surges. If lightning hits a transformer, a power pole, or whatever, and you see a big power surge, that can damage appliances and equipment inside your home, which is why surge protectors are very important, especially for your very expensive equipment like computers and such. You want to make sure you have a surge protector, because lightning, if that does strike a transformer, send a power surge into your home, you want to make sure that nothing inside is going to get burned by that.
Yeah, my sister-in-law's mom, last or 2 years ago, there was a transformer hanging like over the roof of her house. During a storm, it got struck and the whole house caught on fire.
Oof. Yeah, that breaks my heart to think, because there's nothing you can really do about that. That's what's so...
You just got to get out.
Like these lightning fires, are tough, because sometimes it strikes in your roof in the right way and it catches on fire. We cover these lightning fires a lot in the roofs, but as far as, power surges and the potential damage that could come with it, those surge protectors do help. But yeah, it's one of those things where we tell you to be inside, and I think 99% of the time you're going to be safe inside during a thunderstorm, but there's always the 1%, right?
There's always a chance.
Lightning never strikes the same place twice.
This one I learned with Nick that this was not true.
Correct. It is a tale. Lightning actually strikes the same place twice, and it's more frequent than you would think, especially for some of those taller buildings. The Empire State Building, I believe, it's struck, as I looked up, 25 times per year on average.
Wow.
Yeah. Actually, I was just reading this morning that the One World Trade Center got struck by lightning yesterday. Within the last 24 hours, the One World Trade Center, obviously a very tall building in New York City, got struck by lightning. Now, a lot of those big, tall buildings do have lightning rods, which is why, we're not seeing big flames or anything else like that. But you can have the lightning strike the same place twice, which, obviously busts the myth that a lot of people say. I think just kind of a phrase, right?
Yeah.
But unfortunately not true.
Not true. Do you know if any of our buildings here in Austin have been struck by lightning?
Well, I'm sure.
Some
Yeah, I would think they would have to, right? Probably Austonian.
Yeah.
That new water line that they're building, the tallest building in Texas, I'm sure that's probably got a pretty significant lightning rod on it. But there are different precautions that they can take for that. Sometimes I worry about those like moon towers, you know what they put on the Zilker tree at Christmas time.
Even the big Zilker tree, it's so tall.
Absolutely. Luckily, our thunderstorm count does come down, you know, during the winter season. But I would have to look that. I'm sure if I asked Austonian, you know, some of the engineers out there, has this been struck by lightning before this building? I'm sure they'd probably say yeah, because it's just lightning is so frequent where we live. Next one. Every storm produces a tornado. Tail. Absolutely. Right? Yeah. Special ingredients are needed for a tornado. First of all, you really need a strong updraft. So that wind that goes in the vertical inside a storm. And you need those winds to be moving at different speeds in different directions coming out of different directions of the storm. You need a spin. And not every storm has, we call that wind shear, the different winds with height coming out of different directions. Not every storm has enough shear for a tornado. In fact, most of them don't. Most storms do not produce a tornado. I think I put it in my my article. It was about 20% of supercells produce tornadoes, which really isn't a lot, right? Less than a quarter of some of the biggest storms that produce tornadoes do, and like for the better, right? Look at that last point, that nearly 20% of all tornadoes associated with lines of strong storms, QLCSs. That's important to me because nearly a quarter of tornadoes that we see come from those long, skinny lines of storms, which we see quite a bit here in Central Texas.
I saw some this past week.
Yeah, it was a little broken by the time it got here, but you're right. That was kind of a messy line of storms that moved through. The more linear that is, we can see quick little spin ups. So the big EF4s, EF5s, you're going to see those out of the supercells, kind of the lonely big thunderstorms that aren't competing with storms around it, kind of the loner storms, if you will. That's where you'll find some of the biggest tornadoes and the strongest tornadoes. Where we see more in quantity are those long lines of storms that can give us quick little spin ups here with little kinks in the edges along that line. So I thought that was pretty, impressive that, whether or not you want to consider Central Texas and Tornado Alley, we do have that environment, of seeing those. You'll hear me say, typically not QLCS, that quasi-linear convective system, because that's too much in the morning at 5 a.m. if I'm using big words like that. If you hear me say squall line can do that, little spin-ups. Derechos can sometimes bring little spin-ups on the edges of them. So basically those linear storms, if we see little kinks in those, you can find quick spin-up tornadoes, and 20% of all the tornadoes recorded come out of those.
Wow.
I've got one more for you, and you probably talked about this last week.
Texas most lightning of any state. I'm going to say truth.
True. Yep. I mean, we've got a pretty good footprint here in the United States, when it comes to the land that thunderstorms can move over. But yes, new data from our partners over at Vaisala put out that last year, Texas came in on top for the most number of lightning events. There was over 47 million lightning strikes recorded. Now, when it comes to density, Florida is actually number one. But as far as just plain old, how much lightning are we seeing? Texas is coming in on top for that.
I have a few that I want to ask you.
Oh, okay.
And maybe you can help me.
Hopefully.
Them. The number one I asked Nick, I don't remember where I heard this, but I remember always hearing, if you get struck by lightning, you get a white strand of hair.
I would say that's false.
I'm pretty sure it's false, but
or a tail, yeah.
Why would that?
I know. I don't know, because your hair doesn't magically grow,
Just
you
grow
know,
a white
like
strand.
are you maybe like people think it gets like fried, but it wouldn't just be like one little piece of your head that gets fried, you
The
know?
whole head would
Yeah,
probably
like
be fried.
I tell the kids, I'm like, being struck by lightning, it's more so internal damage. Like, sure, you can maybe get like a burn because it's hotter than the surface of the sun, a lightning bolt.
Yeah.
But it's your internal organs that get damaged when you get struck by lightning. So I would say that one's probably a tale. I don't know if you're gonna get, you know, the frozen honest, right? But it would be a story to tell if you did.
That would be crazy. The next one is if it's not raining, you're safe.
Oof, that's a big tale. And I'm glad you asked that or brought that up for me because, you know, people think, oh, I don't see a thunderstorm. And lightning bolts can come 10 miles outside of a thunderstorm. In fact, sometimes you don't even know what storm that lightning bolt came out of when there's so many on top of you. But yes, you can get struck by lightning. We'll call them bolts from the blue. Lightning can come 10 miles outside of a parent storm. So even if it's not on top of you, even if it's not raining, you can still get struck by lightning. Now, if you've got like a blue sky day like today,
Yeah.
it's not going to happen. There's got to be a storm nearby, right? Within 10 miles. But you don't have to be directly underneath it to get struck.
That's so scary.
I know, it is scary.
My last one is metal jewelry or objects attract lightning.
That is a big tale. Big tale. Like I said, lightning is attracted to height. Metal's going to be a good conductor of it. Like this bracelet is not something you'll find me wearing in a thunderstorm. But lightning is looking for, I tell the kids, lightning's lazy. Lightning inside that cloud is looking for the shortest trip it needs to make from the cloud to the ground. And if you are the top of your head, the shortest trip, guess where that bolt is going, right?
Straight to you.
But and I'm sure y'all talked about it too. There's that separation of charge within a cloud where the little positive electrons float to the top, little negative electrons float to the bottom of the cloud, and those little negative electrons are looking for their partner, that positive electron down at the ground, and you see the buildup. It's why if you're ever outside in a thunderstorm, hopefully you're not, your hair starts to rise on your arms.
Yeah.
That means those negative electrons are starting to interact with some of the positive electrons in your body, in your skin, and you are way too close at that point. Static hair, same kind of thing, right? Positive electrons trying to get closer and closer to that negative electron. Don't do it. You got to be inside. There are signs. There are certainly signs, but most of the lightning injuries we see are unfortunately, I think, people who do get caught off guard, like they didn't realize how quickly that thunderstorm was forming, or sometimes even like motorcyclists. If you're next to a guardrail and lightning hits a guardrail on one side, metal good conductor goes all the way down, and if you're standing next to that guardrail, you could get struck.
That is so scary.
I know, it is. And like I said, thunderstorms, lightning is so prevalent in a thunderstorm. That's what makes it a thunderstorm. If there was no lightning, we call it a shower. But next week, I think I'll dive a little bit more into the tornado myths, because I think those ones are a much bigger deal, because for sure you could be talking about life and death. Not that you're not with lightning, but I think everybody kind of knows to get inside when there's a thunderstorm and lightning outside. When it comes to a tornado, you know, the hiding under the overpass,
those things can take out a whole city.
Yeah, and it's tough because we can give you an idea of a thunderstorm is coming. You know, sometimes we don't get a good heads up that a tornado's inside that thunderstorm. Yeah. And there are quite a few misconceptions about tornadoes. And I'm always first to ask, you know, when I go into the classroom, I'll be like, this week, and I'll show you a picture here in a second. I was in Round Rock at an elementary school talking to first graders. And I said, do tornadoes happen where we live? Majority of the class, no. Because they're so infrequent. Rock. They're so infrequent that, you know, these kids were first grade, 6, 7 years old. We haven't talked about a lot of tornado activity in their, you know, memorable lifespan. Those who were here in 2022 remember, right? 4 years ago when we had the EF2 tornado go through Round Rock. They're so infrequent that I think sometimes we lose sight of the fact that there are a lot of Central Texans who have not experienced a tornado event here. The hill country is another one, right? Tornadoes don't happen in the hills or the mountains. They sure can. tornadoes go where the thunderstorm goes.
Yeah.
And if you got a thunderstorm in the hill country,
always out there.
Exactly. Yeah. You can certainly see a tornado out there in the hill country. In fact, my very first tornadic event when I first moved to Austin was tracking a tornadic storm out in Gillespie County that moved into Blanco County. So it can happen. I promise you. But there are, like I said, my goal here is education and to teach. So that way, you know, next time if you, for whatever reason, get caught in a thunderstorm, you know, I'm not going to hide in the tree. I'm not going to hide in the dugout. I'm not going to crouch.
I'm not going to shower at all.
I know, right? Let's do that ahead of time. And I think a lot of people just think, oh, well, sometimes the power goes out. No, the power can surge and it can cause some damage inside if we're not careful. So invest in the power outages. Make sure you're checking the weather before you go outside. And, you know, it's just part of living in Texas.
Yeah, and download your KXAN weather app so that you're prepared.
Yeah, we have those lightning alerts on there too. I know sometimes that can get annoying. This past week when we were talking about an overnight severe storm event, if you go into the KXAN weather app under the settings and it gets you the notifications, if we're expecting overnight storms, you don't have to have the lightning alerts turned on. You don't have to have the precipitation alerts go on because that's going to go off every single time, right?
Just do the flooding
and tornadoes. The severe thunderstorm warnings I want you to know about. The tornado ones I really want you to know about. But you can be very specific in what you need to be woken up for. Mm-hmm. And I really love that feature on our app because I think, you know, like I don't have the lightning alerts turned on in the nighttime events, but I do have everything else turned on, but it will audio, you know, there's, I think it's Nick now, like lightning has been detected in your area. And then you'll look at the app and it says like how far away it is.
Is it really Nick's voice?
Yeah, it is. Because forever it was Jim's voice. It was Jim's voice who did the alerts. And so now I'm pretty sure it is Nick and it'll tell you how close that lightning is. Wonderful feature if you know you're going to be outside during the afternoon. Yeah. Probably not something we need turned on though in the middle of the night.
Yeah, if you're traveling too, it follows your location. So
yes.
Very, very helpful.
Anywhere within the U.S., I think anywhere within the lower 48, you were good with our app.
Yeah. Well, we have the article that you published this morning here on our website. If anyone wants to learn more about the truths and the tales, I learned a lot.
Good.
Definitely not showering anymore. That's the one that stuck out the most.
Good. I'm glad. That's when I go into the classroom at the very end, I ask the kids, I'm like, did we accidentally learn something today? You know, and they give me a thumbs up and I said, okay, my job is done.
Who did you see this past week?
Yes, I will show you. So on Tuesday, right before everything got all crazy, I went to Brushy Creek Elementary. Talked to their first graders there. This is my second visit out to Brushy Creek. So far, I went last year to talk to their first and second graders, and this is a new batch of first graders. So they've got some good questions for me. One of them, which I loved, is we talked about how, you know, sometimes within our clouds, our raindrops and our little droplets of water start to cling to each other and get heavier and heavier, and then eventually gravity pulls them down. Oh. And I had a little girl say, then why do clouds float? Why doesn't gravity pull the clouds down? And I said, that's a fantastic question.
That's a very good question.
Yeah. These water droplets, teeny tiny little water droplets, are light enough to where the wind can actually keep them up. The little updrafts can keep them up. Also, drier air is heavier, denser, but first graders, right? Heavier than moist air or air with water in it. So that drier air can sink to the bottom. And then the little particles of water and ice will float to the top. And if it's light enough, it'll stay suspended as clouds. If not, they'll clump up and fall as raindrops. Oh. So, yeah, I thought that was a great question. And I have not gotten that one before. Now, again, this is first grade talk, right? So,
curious kiddos.
Yeah, exactly. We can go into condensation within the clouds and the water vapor droplets, but we're just trying to get the message across of why clouds float. And it's because teeny tiny little water droplets, before they start to cling together and get heavy, they're light enough to be suspended and kept up in the atmosphere by air.
Any other schools that you're visiting this week?
Not this week. Have one next week. Usually do those on Tuesdays. Spring break.
Spring break.
I was like, why do I not remember what's next week? Next week is spring break for most of our local students. So I will be off of the school weather talks for next week, but then we'll get going again as we get into the end of March.
Perfect. Well, we're excited to hear what schools you visit, not next week, but the following week.
Yeah.
And also more of these truths and tales.
Truths and tales.
I love this topic.
Yeah, this next one will be tornadoes. So make sure you come back in Kristen's classroom on KXAN Plus, because I think there's hopefully a little bit more learning to do there too.
Yes, and if you want to read more on the thunderstorms, it's on our website, KXAN.com.
Perfect.
Kristen, thanks for joining me, and
Of
we'll
course.
see you next week.
See you then.